for joining the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast with your host, Clayton Craddock. If you like what you hear on the show, subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 newsletter at broadwaydrumming101.com. To continue producing the high-quality podcast you're listening to, publishing engaging newsletter content, and posting YouTube videos, we would appreciate any financial contributions you can make. At this time, we have no advertisers, and we'd like to keep it that way. Our staff is small but growing. We can only produce a show with listener contributions from people like you. There are a couple of ways you can do that. You can sign up to be a monthly or annual subscriber at broadwaydrumming101.com. You can also contribute any amount you wish through PayPal at paypal.me/broadwaydrumming101 or through Venmo at broadwaydrumming101. Or help keep us caffeinated by buying us a cup of coffee or a week's worth at buymeacoffee.com/BD101. That's buymeacoffee.com/BD101. We appreciate any support you can give. Don't forget to subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 YouTube page. You'll find more content that isn't featured on the podcast or on the Broadway Drumming 101 Instagram page. Make sure when you subscribe to the YouTube page, you click on the button to be notified when a new video is published. Be sure to visit our new shop at merchandise.broadwaydrumming101.com. Thanks again for listening to the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast.
Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
I'm glad to have Jordan Rose on my podcast today. Nice to finally meet you in, I guess you can call this person.
Yes, right back at you.
One of the reasons why I reached out to you because I saw a while ago some information, some posts, I guess, that you were one of the subs at the Broadway show Dear Evan Hansen.
Correct.
I unfortunately did not get a chance to see the show, but I've gotten a chance to, of course, hear some of the music and talk to Jake Goldbass, who was the drummer on the show. And I know the music is great because a long, long time ago, I worked with Justin Paul. He was an MD at times at Altar Boys. And I remember him coming in to the show in the mid-2000s. And he said, hey, man, check out some of these songs I got. I'm a songwriter. I write some of these songs and check it out. And he started playing them. And I was like, oh, man, that's good, kid. Good luck to you. Next thing I know, he's like doing this and this. I'm like, wow, man, I should have listened closely. So when I see a young man doing great things like yourself, I'm going to be listening in. I've heard you play and you sound amazing.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a part of the show. Are you, you're not a native New Yorker. You are from Houston?
Yes, born and raised in Houston, Texas. Been in New York for 10 years. So I don't know if that counts. Not native, but I think I'm a New Yorker by this point.
All right. What inspired you to play drums?
Well, music was a part of the household. So we all had to take piano lessons. I'm the youngest. I have two older brothers, and mom and dad. They're both musical. They both play the piano. They both sing in the church choir. And my mom plays the organ at the same congregation that I grew up going to down in Houston. She's been playing it since as long as I can remember to this day. And, it's not like burning like gospel hymn and B3 organ. It's like kind of mellow, hymns and whatnot. But she plays them very tastefully. And, I remember as a little kid, like running up to the organ and, she would be swatting my hands away as I'm, trying to play the notes or whatever. So music was a big part of my upbringing. Both of my older brothers joined the band when they got to sixth grade. And oldest brother played trumpet. middle brother played percussion, and I remember it was like a magnet. I was just so drawn to drums. And when I would go to their concerts or when I would be with my mom to pick them up from marching band practice, I would just be fixated on the drum line. And I told my mom, before I got to sixth grade, I was like, I really want to play play the drums. And I remember, I don't know if you had this, but before sixth grade starts, there's like a orientation. If you want to do band, you got to go to this, band night where you meet the directors, and it's a big thing where you learn about the different instruments, and then you choose which instrument you're going to play in the sixth grade band. And I remember on the way driving over to the middle school, my mom said, Jordan, drums, all the kids want to play drums, and you might have to choose a different instrument if they don't have room. And you're kind of a big guy. I've always been like big for my age, She's like, you're kind of a big guy, so they might try and get you to play tuba. And sorry for any stereotypes. I know some tuba players of all different sizes that are fantastic, but that was her, thought of that. And I was thinking, no, I got to do drums. And it worked out. And they let me choose the drums. And honestly, I don't think a day has gone by where I haven't just loved thinking about drums and practicing and playing, and eventually made it into my career. So grateful for those, beginnings in the middle school band.
Did you ever pick up a tuba at all?
Maybe picked it up and put it on just to see what it felt like, but
and put it back down.
Exactly.
Like, what the?
Yeah.
Oh man. So in your church, it's funny. There's a lot of people that look at me. They're like, "Oh, you play drums? You play in church?" I mean, they just assume that I play gospel, or they,
Right.
Depending on if I'm wearing something nice, they think I play jazz. And no, I say, I play show tunes. And they're like, "What?" Not necessarily true. I mean, I haven't grown up in the church, but I certainly can't play gospel chops. I just can't. I grew up playing 70s soul and funk, and I got into rock and metal and of course jazz, but now I play musicals for a living. But was the church music that you grew up, was it complicated like a lot of church stuff is today, or is it?
It's very traditional. There's no drums. There's no band. It's just an organist or a pianist, and then people singing.
Okay.
So it's just very, traditional hymns.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you played in the marching band when you were in, I guess, junior high and high school?
Yeah. High school is when the marching band started. Yeah, I did drumline.
Snare?
Snare, yes.
You were the tallest snare drummer?
I was the tallest snare, therefore I was in the middle. So I was the one who counted off the band because I was the center snare.
Okay. Was it a big band?
Yeah. I can't remember exactly how big, but it's Texas, so everything's bigger in Texas. But there was definitely bigger marching bands than the one at my high school.
Did you guys have competitions with drum lines, or was it just more about the whole band?
We never did, like, they had indoor drumline competition. We never did that. But we did competitions with the whole marching band, UIL, I guess they called it, and whatnot. So yeah.
Were you playing in bands in high school, as far as like rock bands or any other kind of like current music bands?
Yeah. I had a couple garage bands. The Donut Shop was one of them. Skyward was another. Riverside Travelers, No Kings.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of music was it?
A variety. But I guess the one that I felt was the best and I was the most excited about was Riverside Travelers, who then changed their names to No Kings. And that was kind of blues rock, kind of jam band. And the leader of that band to this day lives in Austin, Texas. His name is Ethan Kennedy. And he's still, playing around town there. And just, I've always looked up to him as a phenomenal singer and songwriter, and to this day, he's putting out great music. So I'm grateful that he grew up, a couple blocks from me, and I got to make music with him at a young age.
Did any of those bands record anything? Could I find something on the internet?
Yes, we did record. I think it was kind of pre-streaming, or like Napster was just starting. So, if you beg me hard enough, I could maybe send you a CD in the mail, but I don't think you want to waste your time with that. So
it's kind of hard for me to play a CD nowadays. So
perfect, yeah, that's great.
You got a cassette though? No, I'm just kidding. So after high school, you were like, you know what? Did you want to move to New York City, or what was your plan? Did you say, I want to be a professional musician? What was your ultimate goal?
Right. After high school, I started studying music at University of Houston, just a local choice. They gave me a little scholarship, and they had a good percussion program there. But I knew going into that I was going to take 2 years off to do a mission trip for the church that I grew up in. And so that was kind of just like, all right, let's do 1 year of college, take the 2 years off, and then come back and then figure out the bigger plan. So did that first year at University of Houston, did the 2 years, and we talked about this a little bit pre this recording, that I went to Hawaii and did some service work there. Came back, and then I went to school at BYU outside of Salt Lake City, and was in the music program there for 2 years. All the while trying to figure out, I knew I loved music. I knew that I wanted to do music, but I was trying to search deep within and figure out, is this the right path for me, as a career? And so through a lot of reflection, and I came to kind of get that conviction, like, yes, why wouldn't you do music? Like, you're called, you're supposed to do music. This is why you're here. And once I kind of figured that out and didn't have any more anxiety or questions about it, because at that time I was feeling a lot of pressure, like, you gotta go to law school, or you gotta be a doctor, or whatever, if you want to have a good life, or that was what was going on in my head. And that's not true, what I just said. But once I kind of realized that music is a beautiful path, and the path that I should and that I wanted to go on, then I realized, you know what, I should probably get out of Provo, Utah. It's a great place, but maybe not where I want to spend the rest of my life, and maybe not where I'm going to meet the type of musicians that I want to work with for the rest of my life. There are great musicians there, but just a small pool. And I decided to apply to some different music schools, and I started auditioning, and I ended up at Berklee in Boston, where I transferred from BYU, finished my undergrad there. And once I finished my schooling there, it was New York, Nashville, or LA, It's like, where do I go? I went and visited each place. Didn't really know for sure, but New York just kind of happened. It was the closest to Boston. I had a good buddy, musician friend from Berklee. He said, hey man, I've got this cool apartment in Brooklyn. I need a roommate. You want to move there with me? And I was like, okay, I guess this is a sign. Let's do it. Moved there with my buddy Eric Finland, an incredible keys player, Hammond B3 organ, plays all over the place. And so, moving to New York with him was a great way to have kind of a support system, because we would go out and see music and whatnot together. It was nice to have a buddy to do that with.
One of the things I like to do on this podcast is to ask people that have become a success in New York City to impart some wisdom to those who want to emulate the things that you've done over your career. If somebody's interested in moving to New York City now, they may be listening to this and they may be graduating from Berklee or another music school, or just thinking about moving to New York. What would you recommend to them to do, and what would you suggest that they know before they move to New York City?
That's a great question. I think number one is be as good as you can. Take advantage of the time you have now to practice. People always told me that, and I thought, oh, I'll always be able to practice, for 2, 3, 4 hours a day. And sure enough, here I am 10 years into New York, and it's hard to find the time, because there's a lot of things going on. So that's number one, just, hone your craft as much as you can. Number two, I think, get to know New York a little bit, come visit, try to meet people ahead of time. The internet is a great resource. Reach out to people, when you're coming to visit, say, hey, can I take a lesson with you, or can I buy you a coffee and take, 30 minutes of your time? Because as you well know, the people that you know are going to be the key to your opportunities. Those are kind of the two things I would focus on, is just music first and building your network.
Would you suggest moving to a place like Brooklyn, or staying in Manhattan or Queens, or I live in the Bronx, or
Nice.
Staten Island or Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut? I know I'm expanding the whole radius here. But is there a benefit to living in Brooklyn, and as far as because as we know, it's expensive.
Yes.
Roommates, or
right. I've only ever lived in Brooklyn. I like it here, but I'm open to other places. When I go visit, I have friends who live in the Bronx, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of trees up here. This is nice. I guess it depends what neighborhood in the Bronx, but and then my partner, my wife, she has lived in Manhattan before, and so she's been kind of putting that bug in my ear, like, hey, it's really nice being close to Central Park, and stuff like that. So we're open, but we have a good rental situation here that we're riding out for the time being. So I guess my answer to your question would be wherever the best deal is. It's and what works best for your situation. I will say in Brooklyn, if you're a drummer and you want to be able to play at your apartment, when you're searching for places, to look for a duplex. Like, I would go on Craigslist and I would type in, under the apartment section, the rentals, I would type in duplex or detached. Like, some of those keywords will bring up apartments that potentially could be drummer friendly, because a duplex means two floors, and oftentimes duplexes are ground level and a basement. So before I met Jules, my partner, I had some roommates, and I found a duplex through Craigslist. And I went over with the realtor. I took a snare drum, and I said, all right, I'm going to bang on this drum, and I want you to walk around and tell me how far the sound travels, to see if I could potentially practice my drums there. And some of them, I did that with probably 5 different places. The first one, I started banging on the snare, and the neighbor came over immediately and said, what's going on? So I was like, all right, I can't rent this place. But eventually found one where it seemed like the way the apartment was built, the basement was very isolated. It didn't share a wall with another basement. For example, I was like, okay, I think this might work. And so I had 2 roommates who lived on the main floor, and then I had the whole basement, which was my bedroom and my practice space. And then I turned it into a recording studio, got some microphones, and treated it with some sound absorbers and stuff. And so duplex, I've had other drummer friends who have had success with that too, where they have a cool basement setup. Or detached. The place I'm in now, I typed in detached, and this place came up, and I was looking at it. I was like, wait a sec, it doesn't share walls with anybody. Like, maybe I can play drums there. And same thing, came over here, met with the realtor, and brought a drum, and this was with my wife, and had her walk around, and she was like, think you could probably play drums here without disturbing too many people. And sure enough, we've been here 5 years, and I had a full-blown studio. This is also duplex, so up on the top floor. But during the pandemic, I started recording a ton more, so I ended up renting a space outside of it for a couple of different reasons. That's worked out. But anyway, that's my advice for my long-winded advice. Search for duplexes.
I like that. That's really, really practical, information. When you look for an apartment, bring your snare drum and and annoy the realtor or inform the realtor, like, this is what's going to go down in here. So just be ready.
Exactly. And then they can look for spots that could work. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. So you came here, you got an apartment, you started hanging out. Do you remember some of the places that you went to go meet musicians in New York?
Definitely. Rockwood Music Hall was a big one. Multiple times a week. Monday nights, would go see Jim Campolongo Trio with John Young and Chris Morrissey. And then following them, it would be Rich Hinman's band with Dan Reeser and Chris Morrissey again. And, some nights at Rockwood, it would be like 3 or 4 bands back to back, or like one on stage 1 and one on stage 2, and I'd go back and forth, and I'd just be like, oh my gosh, this is the best music I've ever heard. It's all happening right here, and like basically free. There's not a cover charge. You might have to, buy a drink or two, but definitely worth it to see that level of talent. So Rockwood, I would go there all the time. And I would just try and say hi to people, I'd say, hey, I'm new in town. I'm a drummer, love your playing, and not try to be too pushy, but just try and say hi and get to know people a little bit. Bitter End, I would go there. I'd go to the Monday night jam session with Richie Kanata. I think that's still going, but I have not been in years. But I used to go there all the time. And Oz Noy was usually doing his thing on Monday nights, and he would always have incredible drummers, Keith Carlock or Steve Wolf, all sorts of people. So I'd go see the Oz Noy set and then stick around for the Richie Kanata jam session. So those were kind of a couple staples. There was a couple other spots. There's a spot in Harlem called Paris Blues that they have red beans and rice like on tap, like just free. It's just there. You just serve yourself a helping. And as a young, first year in New York, trying to scrape by, I was like, man, bring on the free food. I mean, to this day, I'll take free food anytime. But
I don't know what the situation is now, but if somebody's moving into Brooklyn now, are there jam sessions in Brooklyn now, or do you not know?
Yes.
Okay.
There are. There's a venue called Come On Everybody. And they have a couple of jam sessions. One is called The Jelly, and I think it's once a month. Great, like kind of, R&B, funk, soul, pop jam. And it's a very friendly environment. You can get up there and play. A lot of great singers, a lot of great instrumentalists. So I've been to that several times. And then they have another jam session there called the Femme Jam, which is an all-female band. Oh my gosh, why am I forgetting her name? She plays for Six.
Elena?
Elena, yes, she plays in that house band sometimes. But you don't. And then after they do their set, anyone can sit in. So that's super fun. There's a newer jazz club out here called Ornithology, which is the same owner of Smalls. And it's like a 4-minute walk from my house. It's in Bushwick. And it's awesome. I've gone over there several times. I haven't really played just because I love jazz. I've played a lot of it, but I'm not really on top of my jazz game as much as I used to be. So I just go to watch, and there's just incredible young talent and it's free to get in. I just walk in, I'll sit down, listen for half an hour, then I'll go home and go to bed. And
do they have red beans and rice there? Can I?
They don't, but you could buy food, and they sell like Mediterranean, like rice and hummus, and I think it's vegan dishes. I haven't tried it yet, but I've seen people. I'm like, man, that looks good. If it wasn't 11:30 p.m. I'm about to go to bed, I would order that. But
So after you moved to New York, you got your place that was snare drum friendly. That should be part of the requirement, like when you type something in.
Right.
They have pet friendly, you can have snare drum friendly. So you moved to New York, you started going to different places. What was the thing that, well, let's just fast forward to, you played with a lot of different people like Corey Wong, Charlie Puth, very, very cool, and Charlie Hunter and many others. Mm-hmm. What led you to the path to meeting Jake Goldbass and subbing for him at Dear Evan Hansen?
Yes. Well, the answer to that is Jamie Eblin. Jamie became a dear friend of mine just over the years of living here. And he was the original drummer for Dear Evan Hansen. And he then retired from that show, and the chair went to Jake Goldbass. So I began subbing for Dear Evan Hansen with Jamie as the chair holder, and then continued on with Jake. That happened with meeting up with Jamie, and a mutual friend of ours said, "Hey, I think you guys would get along. You seem to have similar tastes in drumming and kind of just similar, vibe and personality or whatever." And said, "You guys should connect." So I hit up Jamie. We went to Bear Burger and in Midtown, and then I went and watched him play Dear Evan Hansen off Broadway, and we just hit it off. It's hard not to hit it off with Jamie. He's just everyone's best friend. Such a nice and genuine and kind person. And he basically said, I don't need any subs right now, but if anything changes, like I'll keep you in mind. And from that first meeting, I didn't really think too much about I have to sub on this show, but our friendship just grew naturally. We started hanging out, and he would come over to my place. We would do double drums, or we'd go see music, or I'd go see his band, the RTs. They would play around Brooklyn. I would go see them play, and kind of a natural friendship happened. And then, I don't know, maybe a year after Dear Evan Hansen being on Broadway, he said, "Hey, I need to fill up my sub list a little bit. Do you still have interest in learning the book?" Because by that point, he trusted that I was, capable, a capable musician, and he also knew I was interested in subbing on musicals, and so he took a chance on me. I call him my Broadway father because he birthed me into the Broadway world. And I'll text him at 2 a.m. I'll be like, "Hey, Broadway father, I have a question. How much should I charge for this drum rental for this workshop, or whatever it is." And he's just been such an incredible resource, to this day of basically anything Broadway, whether it's rates or how should I talk to the supervisor about this, or even little things like, hey, if they're going to build you a drum booth, make sure it's tall enough that you can stand up in it, so that way you don't show up and I'm 6'4" and the booth is 6'2", and so I can't stand up and stretch out, just things that I wouldn't have thought about, but he's been around the block, played many shows, and kind of knows what to look out for, the details. So he brought me in. I prepped the heck out of that show, out of Dear Evan Hansen, and went in, was the most nervous I've been in a long time for a gig. And I tried my best, and it seemed to, go well enough. It wasn't perfect. Thinking back, I'm like, wow, I feel bad for the band. Like I was so nervous. It must have not felt great, but I don't really know, but I've probably played the show, 150 or 200 times, since that point until it closed recently. And, it's been a beautiful journey. And through that, has branched out to meet other people in the Broadway world and do some other things. So
what was the process in learning through Evan Hansen to sub your first show?
A lot of transcribing. The book was not very accurate. And so there was a lot of just getting my music together, going through and I wanted to play it basically note for note. And so a lot of time, pencil to paper doing that, and then going and watching many, many times. And then, as I got closer to the date, just running the show a bunch. I tried to emulate the setup that Jamie had as best as I could in my practice space. Excuse me. And just play through it. I tried to put, like my iPad was emulating the Conductor video. So there was recordings of the Conductor video, and I would try and put that there so I could get used to like looking, at the same place and just running it through.
Everyone makes some mistakes when they're subbing a show, especially the first time, because you're nervous. For someone that wants to sub on a show, what is one thing that you suggest that they look out for when subbing on a show?
I think you can't be too prepared. I think watch it an extra time than you think you need. Like if you think, oh, I'm good to go, then get another, date on the books to go watch the show again. Because why not? It's 4 hours out of your day, and it could make a big difference just to have that another rep of watching, the chairholder play the show in person. I think also getting some time on the kit, because that's such a thing about drums. It's such a physical instrument, and everyone sets up different, and everyone, their chair height is different, yada, yada. So if you can become more comfortable playing on their kit, I think that makes a big difference.
Have you been able to sub on any other shows? And I know you said you asked Jamie about doing workshops. Did you do any workshops after that, or have you been involved in any other productions?
Definitely. Yeah. So I subbed for Jamie at Wrong Man off Broadway, right 2019 or end of 2019. And then I've done a handful of workshops, but most recently I just finished a run of an off-Broadway production called Only Gold. And we just finished a week ago. And so I did a couple of workshops with that, and then that led into rehearsals and it was like a whole 5-month commitment. And then I am currently learning the book for Anne Juliet with Sam Merrick as the drummer. And so
before you go on with that, you're the perfect drummer to sub on that show, because I just spoke with him yesterday.
Okay.
And he jokingly said that, he's tall. And he has to find drummers that are tall, and you just happen to be very tall. I mean, he was kind of joking, but I guess it's true. When you talk about somebody's drums,
right?
And, how they're set up. He's 6'4", and you're 6.
I'm 6'4", yeah.
Oh, maybe
I didn't even think about that. Wow, that's going to be easy.
I don't know if he's 6'4". I can't remember how tall he is, but I know he's tall.
Yeah, he's over 6. Yeah. I'm going tonight to watch for the first time. I'm just in the beginning stages of prepping the book. So,
wow. Yeah. So Only Gold. I remember you were talking about that. I remember maybe we said something, or I knew some of the people that were on that show. Was George Farmer on that?
No,
bass? Who was
no,
on?
Rob Jost.
Hmm,
Rob Rob Jost on bass. Matt Beck was in the band.
Matt Beck. That's who it was. So Matt Beck. Who was the other people in the band?
Emily Pecoraro on horn, on woodwinds. Jakob Reinhardt on guitar. Cynthia Ming, MD. Jacob
Hey,
Yates on cello. He was also associate MD, and then a couple other string players. Kiku on concertmaster, Molly Goldman, viola, and Yuko on second violin. So that was the whole band. Yeah.
so a lot of people don't really understand the workshop or reading phases of a show. Were you part of the reading, or you started when it became more of a workshop and they added the drums and musical director?
Yeah, so I started earlier this year, in April of this year, workshop. They had been working on the show for 10 years prior. And so there was a musical director and myself for 2 weeks. And then they brought in a bass player for the next 2 weeks. And we did, like a presentation of the first act. And then that was that. And then they called us up. Michael Ahrens, contractor, called me later and said, "Hey, they're going to do an off-Broadway run at MCC Theater," which started in August and took us to the end of November. And so that was, a whole rehearsal period, which I went in. It was just piano and drums. Andy Blackenbuehler, the director and choreographer, wanted drums from the beginning in the rehearsal room. So I was there from the beginning of rehearsals, and then the band joined much later when we got closer to the show, beginning previews. So
One thing that people may not understand about that whole workshop phase, generally they don't have a drum chart. And you go
right.
in and it's just you and the music director, the pianist, and they give you a piano vocal. It has the lyrics and the piano chart, and on the bottom, it has the bass line. Usually I look at the bass line to
Yeah.
see what kind of rhythm I should probably be playing. Did you get that experience as well?
Not on this show. They were actually quite on top of their game. Kian McCarthy was the music supervisor and orchestrator, and he was very adamant about me having drum charts. So the music assistant was over there just like popping out drum charts for me. So that was helpful. I didn't have to read PVs, piano vocals, but I've done other workshops where that's the case, and it's a lot of page turns.
And you got to pay attention to what's going on. You're listening. You're trying to figure out what to play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a somewhat could be chaotic, but at the same time, it's an incredible amount of creativity going on because
Absolutely.
the director's trying to figure things out. You're trying to work with the choreographer sometimes, and sometimes they want you to play things and you're trying to interpret what they mean. And then, you got to pay attention to the music director. Then you got to think of what to play. I kind of like that. I mean, it's fun, and it could also help you get in on the ground floor of something like Only Gold.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to decipher, dancers count 5, 6, 7, 8. So that, they'll say, "Oh, we need a hit on, 5, 6, 7." It's like, okay, that's beat 3,
I know you play a bunch of different types of music and you record all kind of things, but specifically when it comes to Broadway, if someone is interested in playing Broadway shows, what kind of advice would you give someone who's interested in playing Broadway musicals?
Assuming that the playing is together, I think that's always number one. Music always first, and being versatile, because with Broadway musicals, there's so many different types of music that could happen, and so that's number one. I think number two again is just the network. I think it's important, yes, to meet drummers, but I think not only drummers. I think meeting other musicians, because they could recommend you, meeting MDs, and contractors. They kind of hold the keys. They're the ones ultimately making the call, putting the bands together. So just kind of meeting as many people as you can. If you only focus on drummers, I think that might not get you where you want to go. It could, but I think just meeting everyone. Michael Ahrens, who's a contractor, who's a good friend of mine, and we have a band together now and whatnot. He's given me most of the opportunities, Only Golds, a couple other workshops, and whatnot. So grateful to him. But yeah, music and network, I think, and just being nice, just be like Clayton, just a nice, genuine dude.
So the next logical question is, okay, how do I meet somebody like Mike Ahrens or John Miller or Kenny Seymour or Matt Beck? Where do I go to meet these people?
That's a great question. Well, really quick, to back up to your last question, best advice I can give to someone who wants to play drums on Broadway: listen to Broadway 101 with Clayton Craddock. That will truly, though, this is an incredible resource. It's so focused on something that people don't really talk about, but you talk about it and you talk to the people doing it, and so I think it's, if this is something you want to do, you have to listen to this podcast. Not this episode specifically, but the podcast in general, because there's just so much gold and information. So thanks for doing this. Then I've listened to some of the episodes and excited to continue listening to more. Your next question: how do you meet these musicians? I think it starts with one person. For me, it was Jamie Eblen. He took a chance on me, opened the door. I prepped well and, did my best, which made an impression on Ben Cohn, the music director of Dear Evan Hansen, who then talked to his partner, John McDaniel.
Yes.
Who then, reached out and said, "Hey, Ben said you're doing a great job at Dear Evan Hansen. Would love to meet you." So then I met Sean, went and watched Frozen, and Sean said, "Oh, this is a guy named Michael Ahrens. He pays you at Only Gold or at Dear Evan Hansen." And this is kind of a little bit of a vulnerable admission here, but I didn't know what a music contractor was when I first started at Dear Evan Hansen. I didn't know who Michael Ahrens was. And I was like, wait, you're playing guitar for Frozen, but you pay me for Dear Evan Hansen? I'm a little confused. I texted my Broadway father after, and I said, "Hey, I met this guy, Michael Ahrens. What's that? What's a contractor?"
So,
and Jamie's like, "Dude, Michael Ahrens, he's like, he hires everyone. You got to know that guy. Like, he puts the bands together." And I was grateful that I was almost happy that I didn't know who he was, because I didn't look at him any different. I was just normal. I genuinely loved the way he played guitar. I was hearing him in the cans when I watched the show, and I told him after, I was like, "Dude, I love your tone. It's like, it sounds amazing." I was just like treating him like any other musician, and not that you should treat anyone different, a contractor differently, but he literally called me the next day and he said, "Hey, I'd heard about you, but once I got to meet you and saw that you were like a nice guy, I have this gig for you. Do you want to do this show?" And I did the show called Becoming Nancy in Atlanta, out of town tryout. To answer your question, it starts with one person and just being nice and genuine and doing a good job at whatever the opportunity you might get, whether it's subbing or, whatever you're doing. it kind of can just lead to meeting other people. I always say this too, like, I think part of like networking is meeting the people, forming friendships, getting to know them, but also that human connection combined with them hearing you play or playing with you. Those two things can lead to like opportunities, because you could be the coolest person in New York City, but if they've never heard you, they're probably not going to call you. And so that brings me to the question, well, how can they hear you? And I think the internet is a great tool, put out stuff on YouTube, social media, whatever you want to do, take gigs around town, Rockwood, whatever it is. And you never know who's going to be listening. And they'll say, oh, wait, that's Clayton. I met him like a year ago and he seemed like such a nice guy. And man, I love the way he plays. Like, and then it's like a done deal. It's like they're probably going to call you for something in the future.
What kind of endorsements do you have since you've done a lot of stuff on the road? Have you gotten any endorsements with drum, cymbal, heads, thrones?
So Istanbul AGOP, I endorsed their amazing cymbals that that bring joy to my eardrums. And that's it. There's some companies that I get artist pricing on, but it's not like an official thing. Vic Firth, Ludwig.
Other than the Mike Aarons trio,
yeah.
What other projects do you have? What other projects are you working on at the moment?
Right. Well, I play with an artist named Theo Katzman, he's a member of the band Wolfpack. And Theo is a multi-instrumentalist. He plays drums for Wolfpack. He sings. Their biggest hit, Back Pocket, you might have heard. He's the songwriter and vocalist and drummer on that song. And he has his own side project, the Theo Katzman Project. And I've been fortunate enough to be in that band for 5 or 6 years now. Joe Dart, the bass player for Wolfpack, is playing bass in that project, and some other wonderful musicians in the band. And I recorded drums for Jacob Collier's DeJesse Volume 4 for 5 or 6 songs. I don't know which ones are going to be on the album, but I get seems like a buzz that the album should be coming out soon. I don't know when exactly. So I'm excited to hear that. We recorded at Power Station Studio Room A. So big drum sounds. And then I have another project called Big Little Groove with a keys player named Devin Yesberger. And we have a little EP coming out of things that we did over the pandemic, little collaborations. And we said to ourselves a couple weeks ago, hey, these are good. Why don't we release them? So we just got it mixed and mastered and getting some artwork done, and we're going to put that out.
Has Aaron's got you involved in any new musicals coming up?
No, not at the moment.
All right, I'm about to call him now and tell him, yo, I should probably get him on the phone now and be like, look, I'm talking.
Do it.
Talking to Jordan right now. Oh, man, that'd be funny. No, I won't do that.
Up to you. It's your podcast.
Well, he can't actually, unfortunately, he can't hear you because I have you in here. But man, that'd be funny.
Oh, hey, I could call him.
Yeah.
Because I'm on speaker here. So should I do it?
Yeah, do it. And then be like, look.
All right. Maybe you could ask him, his advice for drummers.
Jordan.
Aaron's, what's up, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Here's a problem. You pick up the phone for Jordan, but you don't pick up the phone when I call. This is Clayton Craddock here.
Oh my God! You call. What are you talking
about? I'm interviewing Jordan for my podcast. You're live on the podcast right now, so I don't want to put you on the spot. But look, I was just asking him. I was like, has Aaron got you on a new musical yet? Why hasn't he got you on a new musical?
I said I'm too busy with the organ trio.
Yeah, there you go, man.
Tell me one thing that why did you hire Jordan instead of me? No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's funny, and I'm like, you put me on the spot a little bit, but it's also actually kind of serendipitous because I was thinking about that this morning because I get emails as a contractor all the time from people who say, hey, I'm new in town, or hey, can you put me on a show, or hey, what do you got going on, or just putting out feelers, just trying to get seen and get heard, And I was thinking about it this morning while I was walking the dog, like, what do I say that's not like a template, like the thing you always say, like, hey, I'll keep you in mind, thanks for your information, like that kind of standard thing. And I was like, man, I think people have to sub, people have to like get out there and sub, because I was thinking in my mind of the list of people that like were kind of new to me and how I got them to be some of my favorite musicians. Like, how did that happen? And it's always word of mouth because they're like subbing, or some other drummer I respect, said, man, you got to check out this cat. He's burning, and then I'll be like, where are they playing? Who, and you hear that enough. And then those are the people that you end up calling. So anyway, which leads me to Jordan, because like he was subbing on Dear Evan Hansen, There's lots of people subbing all over the place on shows that I work on. But like the chorus of people saying all the same thing, like, this guy's ridiculous, This guy has the most incredible feel, pocket, the whole thing. He's a great guy. Like, just everybody saying the same thing. So then I was like, oh yeah, I think that guy's on Instagram, And this was like, then COVID. And then Jordan was doing all this hip stuff on Instagram with loops, like him just like playing stuff, and other really ridiculous musicians would overdub them. So I was like, oh my God, like the feel was just knocking me out so much that like I participated in it. I was like, I want to do one. And then even my wife, Anya, who Clayton, obviously, she's like, I want to sing on that too. So I was like, damn, okay. So it was just like, that was the first time we like played together virtually.
Right.
But then I was like, digging what he does, and I'm just like, this, to me, it was like, there's drummers I hear as a contractor and drummers I play with on Broadway and stuff. And then there's drummers that do all that. But then like, when I want to play music that I like, that I do as a musician outside of all of that, like who would I call? And like Jordan's like, man, I'm like, I think he's like kind of my favorite drummer, man.
Oh,
like, really? Like,
thanks, man.
Ask people. I'm not saying that because I'm on the spot. Like, ask people. Ask Bono or some of these, Mike Bono or some of the guitar players I talk to. I'm like, I think that's the kind of drummer I like to play with, like. Thanks, so yeah, man. I know I'm like, I'm putting you on the spot, but it's like that's really what why I love Jordan's playing and why I put him on a show. And then I'm just like, well, I'll take my chances if he's available. And some off-Broadway things, that's what I have going on right now. I have a couple off-Broadway shows. So as soon as something came up, I was like, hey man, you want to do this? Want to do that? So there you have it, man. That's kind of the Jordan story.
Go ahead and talk about your organ trio and the things that you guys are working on.
Well, Clayton, you remember maybe 10 years ago, you and I, with Ron Oswanski, tried to do this organ trio.
Yep.
And actually, I think you coined the name the Organ Donors.
Organ Donors.
Yeah. But we were jamming out in Jersey, I think, once or twice we got together. And so I've been trying to do this kind of thing for a long time because that's the music I like. Like, when it all boils down to it, it's either the Beatles or, Zeppelin or metal. But when I listen to jazz, like, I tend to I gravitate towards Wes Montgomery, Green, George Benson. And to me, in their prime, they were playing in organ trios or playing in organ groups, with sax or percussion or whatever. Yeah, Clayton, like when we were trying to do that, I didn't really have it formulated. So then this time, I was starting to think that way again during COVID. And then when I came across Jordan's playing, I started talking to him and seeing him playing with other dudes. And he actually kind of kind of threw it out there. He's like, man, you've been talking about an organ trio thing. There's this guy, Eric Finland, who's been kind of saying he wanted to do that too. I think this would be a good connection, like the three of us hang and play. And then it kind of forced me to just like get to work, you know?
Yeah.
Which is what I needed, because like I have these ideas and then they just kind of don't happen, you know? But like, and that's why, and then Jordan, you know, with this one, it was like I had a deadline and I'm like, I got to make charts. I got to write some more shit. I got to, you know, get my act together. So that's kind of where, you know, what we're doing. We're supposed to record next week.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm psyched about it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, Broadway has the best players to me in any style. Just gravitate, because that's where the work is, you know. So if you're in New York, that's where the work is. So you have all these incredible players that do Broadway, and I think it's some of the authenticity of the player, you know, that you know, when someone's really special or someone really shines, is somebody who does other outside gigs or has a lot of other stuff going on outside of Broadway that makes it so special, you know?
Well, one thing I like to make sure that happens in the future, when there's a middle-aged, bald-headed metal band that you create, I'm going to be in the running for the drummer of that. So just think in the future, you know.
We know Matt Vanderend is an authentic metal drummer.
Yeah. What's his name? What's the name of his band again?
Defiance.
Yes, Defiance.
They were like in LA, kind of. I had their tape. Like when I first met him, I'm like, "Oh, dude, Defiance, yeah." And like I had your tape. He's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah," because I was into like 80s thrash metal, and I would like go to the record store and look for the most obscure, you know, like thrash metal band, and it was always about the album cover, you know. so I would like. He's like, "Man, I've never met anyone on the East Coast have, you know, in like 2006, you know, who knew about that band." But yeah, man, he's a real, you know, so he can thrash, man. Authenticity, like, I mean, nothing against people that love Broadway and like, but go straight to school from. I'm going to get on a soapbox for a minute, but you know, like they just go. It doesn't matter if you're old or young. It just matters if you're doing gigs. You know, if you've played gigs, you know, and you've played with people, and you've improvised, or you've written, or you've like played the gig at 2 a.m. with the you know, the jazz gig at Smalls, or the Latin gig, whatever, club date. You know, you can come straight out of school and just do Broadway gigs if you bring some of that authenticity with you. Or you can be someone who's had a whole career who now does a lot of Broadway because they're not touring anymore. I mean, look at like Ray Marchica, you know. He can do anything. And, you know, he has a whole career of doing real other gigs and a lot of Broadway, you know. Or Buddy Williams, another drummer who's same thing. Or you, Clayton. I mean, you know, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, so nothing against people that want to do Broadway or come straight to New York just to do Broadway. But I think it has to also accompany doing a lot of other real gigs or touring or playing with like other people outside of the scene, so that you bring that kind of playing to the scene. I think that sometimes I hear that missing. Sean McDaniel actually said it. I don't think when I told him that he said it, he didn't remember saying it, but I know he said it. He said, if you're great, people hear about you. That's what he said. What are you doing, Clint? You doing the podcast in the subway or something?
Hey, you guys can hear that? Yeah. I tried to turn down the mic, but man, oh man, it's loud.
All right, we got to hear what Sean McDaniel said again.
It's like, brr, brr, brr. I'm like, oh my God, man, New York.
I was like, man, what do you like set up and like, you know,
Times Square,
like doing the podcast? No, I was saying Sean said something once that I never forgot. He said, if you're great, we will hear about you.
If you're great, we will hear about you. That's wise.
That is true.
You come to town, you can be nobody. Nobody knows who you are. But if you play great, you get around and you do the right stuff, like people will hear about you. So what I mean is, if you sub, you don't have to be this paying dues person, sub for 10 years and just get the one show. If you're interested in Broadway, just be great and just be cool and have a good work ethic and professional, all this stuff. But like, you have to play, So if you're killing and you start subbing on one or two shows, eventually the word will spread fast enough because it's a small community. Everyone's gonna be like, man, have you heard this cat? And that's in a way. I mean, Jordan's done a ton of stuff, but that's how he came to me because he was on Dick Hansen subbing, and everybody was like saying this guy's ridiculous. And so that's when I first heard his name. So if this is a Jordan podcast, that's back to that.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, Mike Ahrens. Mike Ahrens, ladies and gentlemen, he is one of the main contractors on several different Broadway and off-Broadway shows. And if you need to reach out to Mike Ahrens, you can find him where, Mike? Where can people reach you?
They probably should go to m2music.nyc, m2music.nyc. That's my company website, and then from there you can reach me all different ways.
Great.
And I'll just say the cool thing about Michael Ahrens is, yes, he's an incredible contractor and amazing at what he does there, but he's like a real deep musician, like incredible guitar player, has, done a ton of playing with all sorts of people, studied the art form. And so that's one reason I'm really excited about this recording next week is he sounds amazing. His groove is great. His soulful, it's deep, it's coming from a genuine place. His tone. I remember I was telling Clayton earlier when I went and watched Sean's book on Frozen. That's when I first met you, and
That's right.
And I remember I think I told you after the show, I was like, man, your tone is amazing, because it just sounded so good, especially for like a Broadway thing, I was like, man, he took this music, this Disney show, and like just made it sound like the guitars really spoke to me. So
thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. I'll see you soon, Jordan. I'll see you soon, and thanks, Clayton.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All right.
All right, talk to you later. All right, guys, see you.
Thanks. Bye.
And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you and know what you're doing?
Absolutely. Instagram is like my main social media right now. Jordan Rose Drums. My goal for 2023 is to focus on YouTube and putting some music and videos and whatnot on YouTube. So that's also Jordan Rose Drums, which I'm going to be focusing on more. So then I have a website that has some information on there, but you could email me through the website or send me a DM through Instagram or whatever.
Thank you once again for being part of the Broadway Drumming 101 podcast. You are a joy to speak to, and it's great to get to know you better. And I wish you continued success in whatever endeavors that come your way, and hope Mike puts you on more gigs. Mike is a real cool person, and you're clearly on your path to bigger and better things. And
thank you. Very, very nice talking to you. Thank you so much. It's an honor, and thank you for just doing this podcast and inviting me on. It's truly an honor. I'm really, really grateful, and I look up to you a lot. So this is having this time with you is means a lot to me. So thank you. Thank you, Jordan, and we will definitely talk soon. Thanks again. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you again for joining us. If you like what you heard, subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please take a moment to give us a nice rating and review. Stay tuned for more.